Hey, Sandra.
Hey, Carrie. Who are we?
The Screaming Divas.
Screaming Divas. In the woods. We're back in the woods. Woo!
Please, people, let us out. The divas need to get out.
Yeah, the divas need to get out of their cages. Ugh.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Who did we interview today?
Anthony Tommasini, New York Times.
Chief critic of the New York Times, people. And he wanted to come chat with the divas. How honored are we? Unbelievable.
Seriously. How many of us singers have had reviews by Tony Tommasini or have waited for reviews from Tony Tommasini? I mean,
we both have.
Seriously, career breaking, making reviews. These are the reviews, New York Times. If you get a good review in the New York Times, you know that overnight your career can go boom.
Huge. And it was when we were talking about people to interview, I really wanted to talk with him because I wanted to know what had happened for him and writing about even digital content or writing about what, since there have been no live opera performances.
What has happened? Yeah, all the musicians that are out of work, but hello, this is a gentleman who critiques us and talks about music, and there's not been live music. So what has he been doing for this past year? I guess you're just going to have to tune in and listen.
And find out. But thank you, Tony Tommasini, as he gave us permission to call him that. I was like, oh, I feel very special. But thank you for coming on and talking to us about your career.
And your career, not just as a critic, but as a musician.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Love it.
Take a listen, people.
Here's a clip. Stay safe.
Bye. My mantra is you think you don't like this art form or classical music, you must hear it live. You've got to be there. Then the young singers, mature singers today, great singers, the sound of those voices just coming at you in that space. You have to go here. You have to hear that, and that was what will always define this art form, I feel.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you doing? Okay.
Do we call you Tony? Is it
Tony's fine. If you're just usually if you're formally introducing me, it's Anthony, but then just immediately start calling me Tony. Sure.
Okay.
I get that.
Great.
So, hi, Anthony.
Hi, Tony. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Sure, of course. My pleasure. Let me say, I during this awful year, it's really several artists like yourselves have taken the initiative to do things like this, to contribute, to keep the dialogue going, to keep passion going, so I salute you both for that. I'm happy to be part of it.
Thank you.
Cheers to that. Right?
Yeah, cheers to that. Cheers to the ongoing conversation.
Yes, although I think we're all sparkling water today, so
Well, I know your history, so I brought a glass of Riesling just in case.
Oh, that's very sweet.
I love that.
Yeah. How are you doing with all of this?
Okay. It's much harder. Often when I talk about my work, especially to other artists or to students, I say that what you all do is harder than what I do. Maybe I can help and I can, be supportive, but what you do is really what matters. And the same thing I feel now that, yes, journalism has been terribly impacted, but yet we have a great responsibility. But we have tried at the Times to keep covering what we can cover and report the news and report the bleak news and report the good things that are happening.
Yes.
And the efforts, and it's been just terrible. But I mean, the New York Philharmonic, just the strings played last week at the Shed, and I went to it, and Esa-Pekka Salonen, for this very limited audience, the first thing he said was sort of obvious, but hearing it come from him was very profound. He said, one thing we've learned during this year There is no substitute, none for live performances, before live audiences. And I think we all are counting, hoping, come September, we're back to normal. Like that has to happen. It should happen. I think it will, but we can't be 100% certain. But it looks good, and thank God it can't come soon enough.
I know. I read that they're doing, because I live down here in Nashville, I read that they are going to open up the amphitheater, which is an outdoor open, kind of like a Santa Fe theater in a way where it's open on the sides but closed on the top. And they are going to do an opera, 90-minute, no intermission. But I thought, and they're only going to have like 800 tickets available, but I thought I don't want to miss that. I need to hear it myself. I don't not only need to be standing on stage, but I need to hear this. I need to hear the live music. So, so I'm at least summer, we have some hope that things are going to happen because we can be outside and do this. We've done it. We've been to these, whether we've sung on stages at Santa Fe or not. We know that can at least happen. So.
And Glimmerglass and Tanglewood, and the Caramore Festival. These places that are mostly outdoors or have things happening, which is great. One thing, not to start all off so bleakly, but the one thing the pandemic has revealed about the field is that the economic support structure for classical music was already so fragile. And what everyone forgets is that 99, some people have jobs, I know, but most artists are freelancers.
Yep.
You live gig to gig.
Yes,
the gigs go away, so does your income. And it's just really, we have to somehow find structures to support artists year round,
we're looking for that here.
Benefits.
We're looking at a basic income for all artists. It's being discussed here in Canada, and I think worldwide, we are essential. We are an essential part of society, and without arts, all including reviewers, critics, musicians, everything, dancers, artists, we need them to be a complete society and a complete human. And
I'm absolutely with you. Of course, yeah.
Oh, I think because I've been through the trenches of it in the last year, the United States government is not prepared for us, is not prepared to help us in these situations, because what we do is, I'm an LLC, I'm contracted like what you said, and nothing, even the PPP has been an absolute nightmare for people like myself who might not have scheduled or filed a Scheduled C. I filed different forms based on Trump's tax code that he changed in 2018. So they don't understand what I do and why I'm asking for either unemployment or help with a PPP loan or an SBA loan or something like that, because I do have legitimate income and earnings, for past years and made great money. And now all of a sudden it's, they don't, it's insane. It's insane what I've had to explain to people.
Right. No, all these things have to be looked at carefully now.
Definitely.
Well, it took a pandemic to modernize opera, but listen, opera was so stuck in the dark ages, and I think that this is going to help us moving forward when we can get back into houses, because I'm sure you would agree with that opera was just not in 2021, not even close to being modernized.
No, I agree. Yeah. And so much of when they talk about modernizing an art form like opera, it's amazing how much they think of staging and what goes on stage. And that's just part of it. But that's not the support structure. That's not the whole underpinning of the art form, we're not just talking about modern productions, which are great, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, I think step by step, I think we're getting there, and I think a lot of people's eyes have been opened now in our art form, and hopefully going forward. Yeah.
So what has it been like for you and then going forward, because it looks like the digital platform is here to stay in our art farm from who we've interviewed even on this own platform. So what is it like for you, for someone who has had an amazing career and being at the New York Times for, am I right? It's over 20 years for sure, the position you've had. Am I saying this correct? The head critic. What is your official title?
It's chief critic.
Chief
Classical Music Critic, yeah.
Of the New York Times. So
I got that gig in 2000. I joined the Times in 1997 on staff.
Okay, yes, that's what I had read. So what does that, I have multiple questions because
sure,
how has it changed over the years? And then how has it changed for you now? And then now knowing that we have digital platforms and having to review that, what does that look like or mean or feel like to you?
Going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let me say first how I think of criticism and what my job is. And critics think of it different ways and do it differently. But I from the start, I have felt criticism to me, a review is a combination of opinion column and news report. It's not 50-50, but it depends. Sometimes I have a strong opinion. Sometimes I don't have a strong opinion.
Okay.
If there's a new opera, if Sandra sings the Donizetti trilogy, there's a lot of news to report. Just what is this thing? You think, what's its legacy? What does this mean for her? What does this mean for the Met? What are the productions like? All that is descriptive. But then also, what do I think of it? What is my take on it? What did it make me feel? How did it make me react? So it's both, and you have to balance those things out. And in the pandemic, what the pandemic has sort of taught me, I think, is that the background context side of what I report is maybe even more important than I thought.
Okay.
That what's at stake here? What's at stake for this artist, for this institution, for this composer?
Mm-hmm.
What risks are they taking? What chances are they taking? That I think it's more important for me to deal with that. Now, the other thing you asked about platforms, well, that's been changing. There were already rich video things and stuff, but and obviously during the pandemic, all sorts of artists, from the violinist Jennifer Coe commissioning 40 short pieces, and for violin and playing them in her apartment, to organizations really putting on whole productions,
right?
And without in empty houses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All that is great. It's been great. I think all of us at the Times anyway have felt not quite right in doing a real all-out review of something that's live streamed. It's not quite fair, it's there are too many unpredictable things.
Right.
It's not the ideal platform, but obviously it's great, and we should call attention, and we should sing the praises of these things when and there's much to praise, but it's not quite, doesn't quite call for a review. So that has been interesting, but I could talk more if you want about criticism and how I do it. And
I'd like to know that. What do you think is the most important component of a good review, or criticism in general? How did it start? How did critics start? Everybody has an opinion, I suppose.
Yeah.
There is a phrase, and I probably shouldn't say it on here, but everyone has one, and we all, everyone has a different opinion.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a wonderful story, a little anecdote that Virgil Thompson, the composer, who was a famous critic at the New York Herald Tribune, wrote. He said, looking for something to compare criticism to, and he said, it's always interested me when I go to Spain and I see children playing at bullfighting, that there's the toreador and there's the bull, and it takes 3 people because a third person has to stand and watch and go, ole. Like.
We need those people in the audience doing that, right?
And that's essential to the art form. And critic, I mean, on some level, I'm just another audience member, like I'm there to hear, I'm there as a music lover to savor it, to take it in, but I have the responsibility of articulating what's going on. And that's the news reporting angle of it. What does this represent for the institution? Is this a breakthrough?
Mm-hmm.
And also a lot of the reviewing job is description. Just describe the music, describe the performance, describe the voice. That's not easy, so that's what I'm there for. Like I'm there to bring everything I know as a musician and critic and writer to bear and to share, to report it, to share. One thing that I will never stop thinking of myself, first and foremost, as a musician, as a pianist. That was my whole training, was in music. And I got my doctorate in piano, and I made some recordings. I was doing a lot of concerts. I taught a lot, and I lost my teaching job. And I sort of, in the mid 80s, I kind of fell into this. And I've always thought of myself as a musician who writes about music, who reports on music. And I think one thing that does for me is that it makes me, it gives me insight as a performer, but it also gives me sympathy in a way. I've been there. I know how hard it is. I'd be the last critic to say that a pianist had a little momentary memory lapse, or a soprano cracked on some note or something. I wouldn't even, unless it's happening all night and there's some indication that there's problem. But just an occasional thing, no, of course, that just happens. But I'm very sympathetic. I don't know, this is a riff maybe I'll go off on, but I'm particularly, I have great sympathy, especially for singers, partly because I'm not one, and every instrumentalist, we are all poor imitators of the human voice, that we try. We can't do what singers can, but we try. But singers, I have always felt, and also the other wonderful thing about singers is that no 2 voices are alike. There's so much character and personality in each voice and each sound, and that's wonderful.
And no 2 days are alike.
But
performances are alike.
That's true. Absolutely. Your body, is your instrument. I mean, like, you feel well, you don't feel, like, all sorts of things can. But I always feel that singers, it's opera singers especially, it's tough. 18-year-old young woman, 18-year-old violinist shows up at Juilliard. She's brilliant. She's played concertos. She's played chamber music. She's all set to go. She needs maturing. An 18-year-old soprano shows up at Juilliard. She's just starting. Yep. She's just figuring out the dimensions of her voice. She may even be figuring out, am I really a soprano? I think I am, or what kind of soprano? Yes, like, it's a different, and it's like in your late 20s, you're still figuring out, what is my voice for? And then just as you figure it out, it just starts changing. Like,
especially for women, like menopause. Like, good God.
This is a little randomness, but do you ever, because as a performer, and especially over in the last probably 5 to 10 years, where the money is less and less, there's not enough money for these opera houses to have the long rehearsal period times that actually give us enough time to put something that gels well together. Sometimes it's really fast and furious depending on everybody's schedule. Sometimes I feel like the show doesn't really hit its stride until performance 4, performance 5. And I always wish that the critics would come back. or maybe just not go to opening night. I mean, sometimes opening nights are amazing because we have had the time and all that kind of stuff. But have you personally ever gone back because I know that you guys usually do the opening nights, but have you ever gone back through a run to watch something again to see what has happened, or if anything's changed, or if it changed your mind or your opinion about a certain performer?
I absolutely have. I know all of my colleagues have, especially if it's an unusual piece or sometimes a premiere,
Okay.
or especially if I what you're describing, that it's really good, but didn't quite work. I can tell it's still a little, let me go back and see if it will, kick in now. So I have done that. I once did a kind of Q&A online, back and forth online with readers asking me questions for a whole week. And someone asked that, why don't you go to in opera, sometimes the first performance is really like a dress rehearsal.
Yes, it is.
And I wrote back and I said, that's very true, but there's another thing going on here. It's called news, and if it opens up, we have to be there,
right.
About it. But yes, one thing people think about, the deadline's so hard, you have to go rushing home and churn out something, and by the latest, like by 10 a.m. the next morning at the latest. And I've done things overnight,
Wow.
But certainly by the next morning I have. But in a way, that's terrible pressure. But in another way, it's sort of, I like what it implies, that a review is saying, look, I was there last night. This is what I thought.
Right.
This is my first impression. If I thought about it for a week, maybe I feel differently.
Mm-hmm.
If I went back again, maybe I'd feel differently. Alex Ross at the New Yorker is a very good friend, and he's a wonderful critic. But his job and my job are very different, because he inevitably will go to the production at the Met or some new, work or something. He'll be there also, but his magazine article doesn't come out for a couple of weeks.
Right.
So he's seen all the other reviews, and he knows that his readers have seen the other reviews.
Okay.
So he has to stand back a little and offer a different kind of take.
Kind of an all-encompassing.
Exactly. Yeah.
In a way, I think he reviews the reviews or comments oftentimes on the reviews. You're right.
It's a larger context commentary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gone to a performance and just didn't know what to write? Like we're just
but it's not for the reasons you might think. Mostly, it's for things that are middling. They're so.
Yeah.
If it's, this happens more in symphonic repertoire than in opera. For example, if the Philharmonic plays a very standard repertory program, the Eroica Symphony on it, in a way, and say it's good, it's not amazing, it's good, they're always good.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not that much to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even Beethoven's Eroica, we all know it, we all love it, it happened again. There's not that much news there. It's a little different in opera. Bohème, or Tosca, I can't even imagine how many times I've heard them. But every opera is a little different, as you know. The people are different. Yeah. There are no two Marcellos, no two Musettas who are alike. It's always got a little character, a little personality. Okay. So I seldom feel that at Opera House. There's always some personal thing, to write about. I may not have great insight into the work itself that night, but at least there's a singer or an impression that someone made that is. But in a symphonic concert, sometimes I think, I have nothing to say. There was no news here, unless I say, I could write a review saying, why is the Philharmonic playing such a boring program?
Right.
I could do that.
So when I started in this business and got to the point where I could be reviewed by someone of your caliber, it was a huge deal to be reviewed by you. And I'm not just saying, it's the truth. There were a handful of you all in the country and in the US where we could not wait to see what you were going to say. And then as time went on, all of a sudden the market got flooded with bloggers, with people, blogs became a big thing and everybody had their own opinion out there. and it changed it. It changed the landscape for us performers because we were using your review to pitch ourselves to Paris Opera, to Vienna, to wherever, to say, hey, this is what her latest comments and reviews about performances were. But those bloggers changed everything. Do you have an opinion about that, or how that has changed in the last, what is it, 10 years maybe that's happened?
It's a very interesting question. And it depends upon how you look at it. What you're getting at is the authority of a New York Times critic's review. Is if everybody is a critic, if there's so many voices out there, if basically online you could start a conversation about last night's performance, does it matter what I thought? And at the Times, the other way to look at it is that because there's so much out there, so much chatter, so much opinion, so much uninformed opinion or mean opinion, like that maybe more than ever, what professional edited critics at a place like the Times with its authority, maybe in a way our role is more important.
True.
Maybe, and people have, you're asking in a way like the authority I have. I try not, I take that, I'm humbled and I'm honored and I know it's a big responsibility and I take it very, very seriously. And I know, let's face it, it's influential. I know that, but on another level, if I get caught up with that, I freeze. I wouldn't know what to write. At some level, I have to, much like opera singers, I have to say, hey, it's me, this is me. Right. I've earned the right to write, but it's just me. I could be wrong. It's just my subjective opinion, I know that, again, opera, Renee Fleming has talked about this a lot, that the comparisons are so hard, for Sandra, you can sing the Donizetti Queens, and the last thing you want is, well, what about Collis? What about Sullivan? What about Sills? It's like, no. Oh, yeah. But it's me. This is me.
Right.
It's about me.
But that's always trying to put us in boxes because it's easier to describe them if you say, Sandra is like Callis, or Carrie is like Birgit Nielsen, and it's easier for people in their minds then to the comparisons. But thank you for saying that, and Renee for saying that too, because some people don't fit in boxes, and people, it's hard to describe exactly.
Yeah. Also, by the way, Collis and Sutherland and Sills, they're not here. I'm here singing,
yes,
I'm the one doing,
I know. How would you describe, what, in your opinion as a critic, is the thing that you look the most for in a singer, or the best quality? How would you describe a great opera singer?
It's again, with voice, it's a special category because sounds are so different. The personality and character of a person comes through in their singing, I think. I'm convinced, and so you do look for a distinctive quality to the voice, to the sound, something that seems personal. That doesn't mean like it has to be a sound like nobody else's. There are some, Dmitri Vorstovsky famously had a very recognizable sound, it was a gorgeous, beautiful sound. But not some singers that really do have distinctiveness don't have quite that kind of, ID sort of, and they're still distinctive and personal. So I look for that too. I really do, and that's ultimately what moves me. But then there's a whole acting dimension to it, and I don't mean just the actual performance. I mean acting with the voice.
Right.
That you think of opera and passion and but as you all know, you can overdo that. it can go too far.
Yes, it
Yet
can.
on the other hand, you can try to be tender or cool, and that doesn't work too. You've gone too far in that direction.
Mhm.
So you have to find the right balance. And so I look for that in a singer. Are they, and then finally, the musicianship. I mean, I guess because I'm a performer too, sometimes, especially with older classic golden era recordings, you'll listen to even Lotta Lehman or something, and I'll think, yeah, but gosh, she's not singing in time, like it's, I think today you all have conservatory training, and these matters have been drilled into you a little bit more. And American singers and North American singers, like that you can.
I have to tell you though, sometimes those recordings, even ones that are going on today, sometimes it's not necessarily the singer that's wrong. It's the singer arguing with the conductor and saying, no, I'm going to sing this my tempo. You better follow me.
Yeah. Right. I'm sure that happens. And, but sometimes I feel it's just for the sake of an expressive turn that someone will just distort. And I think, no, it's a dotted note. I want to hear the rhythm.
Yeah.
So those things matter to me. Where you hear a singer in the Collis master classes at Juilliard, it's incredible how precise she is about yum, ba-dum, ba-dum. She wants those rhythms exact. And then also the words matter tremendously, like
huge.
The diction, and as you know, it's not just a matter of diction. It's not that's part of it. But do you make the words matter? Do the words drive the vocal line? Do the phrase, you're saying something, and that I'm a huge fan of the great art of musical theater singing, because often those voices are actors first. They sing like actors.
Right.
And it's amazing when someone does that. The actual quality of the voice doesn't really matter as much, because it just leaps off the stage at you.
Yes.
And I think sometimes what you all do, what opera singers do, is so amazing, so wondrous vocally, that some singers can get so caught up with that.
Yeah.
With the making of beautiful, that you forget, well, what are you singing about? Where's
we don't take the time. A lot of us, I would say pre-pandemic, a lot of us were so just on, running, that we would learn a role, and a lot of young artists too, learn a role and not really understand what it was about, what we were saying, the character, and taking the time like they used to do back in Callis's time to really study a role. And I think it shows when you know what you're saying and when you don't know what.
Yes, it does. It's like I feel like it's a neon light. It's like, yep, I didn't know what that phrase meant, and all of you saw it.
Dead eyes, I call it dead eyes. You just kind of go, right?
To spin off, if I could turn around the interview a little bit, since we're sort of talking about this, can I ask, sometimes when I've interviewed singers, how much do you see the acting component of what you do as, is it just part of it, or is it most of it? Or could you have imagined, if you didn't have the voices you do, do you think you might have been drawn to the theater? Is acting, where does the acting come in? Or is opera acting just so different because you act so much with the voice? Some opera singers have learned that, in this aria, in this moment, maybe it's not, I don't need to do too much. I have to sing. Maybe on stage in a play it would be different, but when opera,
you have to trust. I'm going to go first, Carrie. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you have to trust the emotion of what you're saying, and sometimes if you just stand and sing from your heart and from your soul, it's more touching to the audience. And William Friedkin, who we interviewed here on this show, great director, not just of opera, but of movies, said to me once, just Sandra, I don't want you feeling it. I want the audience to feel it.
Right.
And it's a difference between the two, because Carrie and I think we're both singing actresses. And there is a difference, I think, because we both have training in acting. But for me, it's I have a hard time. Yeah, there you go. I knew Carrie would say I have a hard time differentiating now in my career singing and acting because they are so intertwined. Am I right here? And how do you approach it?
No, I think it has to be both. We both have been so lucky with the directors we worked with over our careers, but I was so lucky to have that early on. That one of my big first things was with Christopher Alden. And I drank the Kool-Aid because I said, well, I feel it this way, I hear it this way, my emotions are telling me this within your framework and story. What do you think? And it was this wonderful dialogue that went back and forth, and also teaching me in where an acting line was, can I cross that? Also, you're learning how to figure out how to sing that emotionally in a way, because sometimes it's so emotional we all can break down. I mean, there's Elsa Vandehever is like the one singer I know on this planet that can cry and sing at the same time, because I've done it with her on stage. But we all, Sandra and I, have lines that we go to because sometimes it is so emotional and we are so invested in that character that, what am I trying to say, Sandra? You know what I mean? That it affects vocally.
That's what rehearsals are for. You
exactly.
have to sometimes emotionally distance yourself. And also sometimes when we feel it, when we as artists feel it so much, and it moves us to tears, people in the audience are kind of like, not you as the public felt.
Right.
It comes from doing it and
learning from people that teach you how to take that so that it crosses the footlights, because that's the whole point, is that the story that we're telling needs to reach you. My goal is always to have that audience in the palm of my hand, where I don't hear a sound, where I know that I have them because they're with me on this emotional journey through this story that we all are trying to tell. I think that's those are the performances I live for, not only for myself, but for ones that I go to the audience to watch. I want to be transported out of my life and what's going on around me, and I want to go on somebody else's emotional journey with
time there was no time. There was no concept of time. Right. There was no concept of character. And and you just feel transported.
Now, some people can do that just with their voices. There are those performers that can do that, but the majority of us use both. And I think when Sandra was saying that stillness is also one of the most powerful tools in our wheelhouse is stillness. So you have to know when to use that, when it's appropriate and when it's not.
Didn't ask this question.
Sorry. Was that Alden production? Was that the Don Giovanni that was amazing production. I loved that production.
I did too.
Everybody in that cast, that was great. It also was it was proof to those who doubt what is modern contemporary production. It showed that just a simple concept can unlock so much, can take you so deep into that piece. Yeah. And yet it was playful too,
It was, I mean, not the time to invest the energy in learning who we are, not just as singers, but who we are as people, and taking that and using that in the production. People like David McVicker, people like David and Christopher Alden, who actually love their art form and love the whole process of picking it apart, right?
Yeah. And that the people that they're working with, it's not, this is my concept, do it. It's, he's meeting me where I am and where I am in my own life, my own emotional journey, whatever it is. And we're figuring out a story that reads and tells, and also to be open to someone who is so brilliant. I mean, these people are so brilliant in what they do. And sometimes their ideas are like, oh, what? You want me to do what? You want me to sing something that wasn't even written for Donna Elvira? Are you crazy? And so just to be open to that idea and to express that. And no, I'm glad that you love that production. That production changed my career and changed my life. And that I have a special place in my heart for that.
Yeah.
Collaboration. So what, if you had one performance in your lifetime that you say, done? If you had to just replay, put it that way, there's one performance in your life that you could just push on replay and be happy for the rest of your life. Do you have one of those?
That is so hard, but you know,
Five. Let's do the top five.
from years of therapy, you learn to go to what popped up into my head was I was 16 and I had very close up standing room at the Met, and it was Otello with Tebaldi, and I mean, whom I heard her several times. Even when I was in college at Yale, she came to Yale and did a concert with the orchestra. But I heard her at the Met. This was the old Met, and the last days of the old Met, and I was new to the opera, and everything that we've expression. The character in the last scene, the last act, the sound, I just thought, wow, this sound, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And
Gosh,
that was the night that people would not let her go. She finally came out during ovations with her overcoat over her costume. They got a signal, I gotta go. It just, but you know, like, it's funny, I'm from a very unmusical family. I found all of this on my own.
okay.
It was my own. And I just was in opera, especially, I mean, in concerts, I went to hear Rudolf Serkin and Leonard Bernstein and all these people. But in opera, my first Otello with the Desdemona was Tebaldi. My first Aida was Leontine Price.
Yeah.
My first Turandot was Nielsen. My first Lucia, I hardly knew the piece, was Sutherland.
Oh my God.
I read this about you and I was dying. I mean, when I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my gosh, you were so lucky. So
Plus,
lucky.
the other thing is that I'm in high school, I fall for, this is the weird thing amazing thing about my career. So I hear Tebaldi, I can't believe it, you know, and finally she retires in 1976. 20 years later, she comes back to New York. There's this kind of silly biography written about her, but she came to promote it. And I think I was 96, I would have been, maybe I wasn't even on the staff of the Times yet, but I was writing for the Times.
Okay.
And who gets to interview her for this visit to New York? Me. So I sit down with her and I interview her, and I spent some time with her over a couple of days. Then fast forward, when she died, who wrote her obit? I wrote her obit. So if you had told me when I was a 16-year-old with standing room that someday I would meet her, I would interview her, I would write her New York Times obit, it's like, what?
Unbelievable. It's incredible.
Paths our lives take, you know?
Yeah.
You just never know. But that's just what adds to your reviews and your critiques, because you have all of that past information and you can compare and contrast, and that bag of tricks that you have in your ears is amazing.
But it's also the immediacy. It gets carried to what you were saying, asking about the digital platforms and how it's changed stuff. And what Solomon said at that concert last week, that there will never, ever, ever be. And that was one thing I learned. I remember in the balcony of this, high up for Price's Aida. And again, hardly knew the piece. But in the last scene, when she has the vision of the angels, you know, and the music goes floating, that these soft, radiant high notes would just come up to the balcony and surround me. Yeah. It's like, that's opera. It's not just this, it's that opera.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I have those memories, but I also, my mantra is you think you don't like this art form or classical music, you must hear it live. You've got to be there, you know. Then the young singers, mature singers today, great singers, the sound of those voices just coming at you in that space, you have to go here, you have to hear that, you know. And that's what was what will always define this art form, I feel. And so yes, we don't have the singers from these earlier generations. Yes, we adore them, but now what matters are the singers today, like so, and who keeping this alive. So that's yeah, that's what I try to get across when writing about these things.
Thank you.
Talking about those seats up there in the nosebleed section at the Met are still some of my favorite seats. I still love to go up there and start the show up there and then come down for the second half, because there's just something about the sound that's up there reverberating around that dome it's really quite spectacular. I did it a lot as a student because, that was all I could afford. It was either standing room or up there. And then I'd kind of wait and see who didn't show up or who didn't use their seat, and then kind of sneak down and get down so I could see the blood, sweat, and guts that was happening close up. So,
but that's one of the things. It's actually, some people argue the best acoustics of the Met are up there.
I agree.
And the balances are perfect up there with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And the sight lines are excellent. You see everything. You're a little far, but that's okay. I'm sure it's hard for singers too to think, oh my God, I have to fill this house. But actually, your voice does carry. But you can't think about it in any opera house. If you trust the acoustics, you just have to trust your voice and let it. Singers with Natalie Dessay did not have, by any means, this huge, big voice, but it's the way she supported her voice beautifully, and the sound there it was. It just came out.
It's about finding the opera house and putting that point in the voice, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because if you keep it very concentrated, like Natalie does, and also in the Met, so many people think that they have to oversing to fill it, but the acoustics, with being built the way it is, with the same wood in the opera house, like all around, you don't need to do that. And sometimes doing less actually is more.
Right.
You just have to think about each opera house has slightly different acoustics, and the Met is perfect. It really is. They built it wonderfully. I mean,
but it is really exciting to hear, honestly, somebody like yourself, Sandra, with a canon. And when you let that canon out, when you let it loose, it's really exciting to hear that in a big space like that.
I gotta say.
Yeah, no, it's great. Of course, it's very thrilling, and we all love that. And I'm sure it's a ton of fun to do it. When you can do that, I know. Of course, that's a thrilling thing about opera too. And in Boston, Opera Company of Boston, in the 70s, I guess it was, John Vickers and Fidelio and Sarah Caldwell's production in Act 2, when the curtain goes up in the prison, it was so dark you could hardly see anything, and then you hear these chains rattling, and gradually you begin to see the glimmer of a figure there, and then the voice comes, God, oh my gosh.
There's another one of those memories that you're like, great.
But I remember leaving that performance thinking that is probably exactly what Beethoven had in mind, that impression of that voice coming out of the darkness. What darkness here,
Gosh, I mean, just listening to this, I'm like, please, whatever in the universe is out there, we need to get back into the theater. I don't even necessarily have to be standing on stage. I can just be sitting in the audience. Like, I need it. I need it for my soul to hear this live again. It's just been too long.
Do you think you're going to listen to performances differently now after this pandemic?
I think I will. I think we all will. It's, I think we're going to find it very precious and terribly moving.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I think what we have to be careful of in the profession is just thinking that just returning, just coming back, and the status quo is going to be enough. And if anything, because we've been through this, and also all the racial justice protests, and which institutions, to their credit, have taken to heart, at least in what they say, and in classical music too, saying we do have to think about this. What can we do differently? how can we be more inclusive?
Right.
You know, how can we make, this is an art form for everyone, you know, and what are we not doing? You know, what must we do? The Met is assuming it opens as planned. It's going to open with the first opera by a Black composer in the history of the Met. You know, Terence Blanchard, Fire Shut Up in My Bones. Now, I covered the premiere of that opera in St. Louis, and it's terrific. And it's terrific. So great, terrific. That's great that the Met is going to do that. The other question is, what took so long? You know, you know, when you'll love this story about Beverly Sills was late in making her debut. You know, at the Met, it was shockingly late, but she finally did. And then the Met said, okay. And she said, yes, I will, on one condition, that you hire the wonderful conductor and my good friend from Boston, Sarah Caldwell. And the Met said, okay. And that's the reason that Caldwell became the first woman to conduct at the Metropolitan Opera. Beverly Sills stuck up for her, you know. And since then, there have been surprising, I've been about 6, I think it's up to now. Women have, and what, you know, like that. So this, we do have to keep the pressure on, both internally and from artists, but certainly externally by me as a critic, that, you know, we have to think about these things, we have to change. And living composers and the cause of new music and new opera, this has been my passion, and we have to fight for all that. And, you know, and if anything, we have to fight even harder, you know, for inclusiveness and diversity and new artists and new composers. That at the same time that I agree, just hearing a youngish cast or a good cast in La Boheme is going to be overwhelming. You know, like it's just, it's going to think, wow, you know.
I know.
We should never take this for granted, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
What else do you think needs to change in opera besides, you know, the what we just talked about? Are there other aspects you think we need to focus on, that we as viewers or we as singers, as musicians?
Yeah, I do think, to pick up on one thing I mentioned, a piece I was proud of that I wrote last year before the pandemic. Anna Netrebko, who's amazing, sang the Puccini Gala at the to open the on New Year's Eve. You know, 3 acts from 3 operas, and she was wonderful. And the Turandot was new for her, brand new and tremendous, just tremendous. Act 2, and okay. And I reviewed it. About a week later, I wrote a notebook saying, well, if Puccini had been there, he would have said, well, this is all great and very flattering, but gee, does this Netrebko soprano, does she only sing old operas? Does she only sing operas that are 100 years or older? Because when all those operas were new, the public couldn't get enough of new opera. All those sopranos fought over those roles, you know, to sing in the next Puccini opera, you know, and somehow we have to get back to that. We have to really, really try to cultivate new operas and new composers for opera, and do much, much more to pull composers into the companies, into the Met too, and to foster these new works. And I know that singers with the kind of curiosity that both of you have, and especially, you know, singers right out of conservatories and stuff, would be eager, you know, to do new things, to do new roles, and, you know, like, and have pieces written for them, you know, to sing. So that's what I think opera has to do a whole lot more of. And that bel canto, I'm sorry, the Verismo era was something. I mean, the public was just hungry for new stuff, you know, for new work. And it's funny, even when Caruso, who premiered a lot of operas, sang a lot of new or recent operas, when he sang something like Radames and Aida, that piece was newer than like Peter, you know, than Billy Budd is today. you know, even that wasn't that old a piece, you
Right.
know, like, so,
It's hard to wrap your head around that, isn't it?
yeah,
You know,
so
our-
opera has to do better at that. And singers can play a part in that. It's
Absolutely.
saying, hey, you know, I'm ready. I would love to do it. You know, I would, I'm eager. So
use our voices
use our voices. Yeah,
in many ways. I have a silly question.
sure.
I know that you are big friends with Virgil Thompson, proponent, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to review someone who is your friend?
That's very, that's a very good question. I would say no, because I don't. It's I have a couple composers who are very good friends, and I simply can't. It's just off bounds. I can't do that. It's and Virgil Thompson, when he was in his day as a critic, when he was alive, the he was shameless in the 40s and 50s, you know, reviewing reviewing people he knew and putting down people he didn't like, and the conflict of interest was shameless back then. But no, at the times they're very, very careful about this, rightly so. It's funny you mentioned this. Another piece I wrote a few months ago that I was proud of was about the pianist Peter Serkin, who was almost my age. He was just a year older, and I revered him. I just thought he was an amazing guy. And we were both baby boomers, and we thought a lot, and we were in touch a lot. We spoke on the phone and emailed and stuff, but we were never quite friends. We were sort of friends, you know, like, and I wrote about that it was sad, you know, that in a way that we could have been these great friends, and we were sort of friendly and friends, but not really. And I sort of early on figured, well, I can do more for music, and I can certainly do more for this great artist by being a critic, you know, which didn't mean I couldn't see him now and then, and, you know, and exchange private notes sometimes and stuff, but I had to know I couldn't go too far. So no, I don't, people think that they assume that critics become friends with these artists, but you don't. I think I'm friendly with many artists. I think Renee would say that about us, that we're friendly. You know, we feel warmly and want good things for each other, you know, but we're not friends, you know, we don't socialize.
And that's difficult. A person in your position and an artist in our position, then they would say that, oh, well, if you were to do a review, or someone else at the New York Times were to do a review and give you a favorable review, when the performance was, they say, well, that's because they're friends with blah, blah, blah. And I get that. That's a casualty of our profession. Right.
Yeah, you can. But it doesn't mean you can't. I mean, I love doing interviews with people because it's a moment where you can sort of find out a lot more and realize who each other are as people, or what we're doing right now, you know, like, and which is wonderful. And no, I love that. But yeah, it doesn't cross the line into like Alan Gilbert. When he showed up at the Philharmonic, I was a big booster of him. I thought he was going to really do exciting things and some important stuff. I was a fan, you know, and I interviewed him many times, but always, I mean, I had a lot of conversations with him, but always in the context of some interview or some story I was writing. Sure. We didn't hang out, you know.
Okay.
You know.
Thank God.
You know, and also, I mean, it's a question of degree. If one night after some performance that I wasn't covering, some people went out and Alan Gilbert had joined us, you know, or and I had a drink with him, that wouldn't matter. That'd be okay.
Yeah, that's socially. That's a.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
How happy are we that Alan Gilbert is doing well after COVID? That was.
Yes, I hear he's doing much better. Yeah, he's you know, youngish and healthy, and it sounds like it's going to be okay. But yeah, he's it's a relief. This has been very scary, and you know, it's easy for us, everybody, on to some degree. We all can't help but being worried about ourselves, our own world, our own field. And in classical music, the economic devastation has been terrible. But of course, we all know what it's loss of life and loss of health. Those are the real concerns, of course, worldwide. And we all know that. And classical music has had their share of losses too, and share of impact from them. But that, of course, is what drives everybody's fears and concerns and our effort. But the economic impact has been terrible, and especially on the performing arts.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's just, I was thinking when this happened, I think I wrote this too. 4 days after 9/11, the New York City Opera was back with The Flying Dutchman, a new production. Within a week, Broadway was back. By the end of that September, everything, Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, even restaurants, most of them were all back. It was like New York's way of saying, take that. Even this attack is not going to stop what really matters to life here, But who could have imagined that sitting next to somebody at the Metropolitan Opera would be risky, or being a member of a chorus standing on stage and singing would be risky. Yeah. We wouldn't have imagined such a thing,
A pandemic in our lifetime, we can think about all different things, and who would have thought that arts especially were going to be hit so hard, every aspect of the arts.
And I wrote a piece in celebration of crowds, that opera especially, you have the singers on stage, the chorus crowded on stage, the musicians crowded in that pit, people crowded in the aisles, and then you go into Lincoln Center Plaza, it's full of crowds, and then you go home on the subway. And New Yorkers and opera lovers love that. You love the crowds. You want to be part of the crowds. That's part of the experience,
Will we get back to that, you think?
Yes, we have to, and we will. I'm sure we will. Yeah. But we must. I think we will. And vaccine, once everybody's, it's complicated, but I think we will. We have to.
I hope so. I think what's heartbreaking in the arts is that we don't know what the devastation is going to be. We don't know it yet. We don't know how much talent we've lost because people have just had to forge different paths.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. I feel especially for those right out of college, right out of conservatory age, where, as you both know, it's those years.
Yes.
Maybe you're still finding yourself, but you're also making connections. You're figuring it out, your path, you're networking, you get this experience. Mm-hmm. Like those are crucial years, crucial.
But I have to say, we've interviewed a lot of young artists, and they really seem even more driven now. The ones that we've interviewed, they're finding different creative ways to keep opera alive and for them to forge ahead. And they're really going to be. They are the future of opera. It's not me. It's not Carrie. It's these young kids that are really finding and defining the future of opera. So we want to give them all this information, and you helping them with all this information. If we can help them at all find their way, then please. Shall we? Carrie?
Oh, is it rapid fire? Are you ready for rapid
fire? Tony, are you
sure.
ready for rapid fire?
Yeah. I'll do my best. Rapid, I'm usually not, I think I would say of myself that I'm a very intelligent and thoughtful person. I'm not so quick necessarily. Quickness is not my thing. But
okay, we can call it mildly rapid fire.
Okay, mildly rapid.
Okay. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word, maybe elegant, I think, because it's nice and it means so many things. And it's very useful in music and the arts. It's just vague enough that it can mean various things, but elegant singers. I love elegant singers.
Elegant singers.
Yeah.
So then what would be your least favorite word?
Least favorite, I don't know. Maybe scrappy, because for the same reasons, it's too vague. It doesn't it implies that, oh, you know what we mean. And see, I can't help thinking of this as a critic and using deploying language. And it's just, I've probably been guilty of using it earlier on, but I think I haven't for a long time. And you have to be more precise than that, I think.
Okay.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Well, I mean, maybe this is cheating, but I was a teacher and I always wanted to be a teacher. And maybe this is also cheating because it also is partly what I do. But the other thing would be to be a writer, a fiction writer.
Oh, okay.
Because I do feel I'm a writer, and I'm comfortable doing it. And but profession totally outside of writing or the arts, I'm not sure. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor, but that was mostly my parents, I think, trying to put that into me.
Is there one thing that you for sure never ever want to do, a profession you just said?
Profession is any kind of business, anything. Anything in business. It's just not my thing. It's funny when we think about running things. I think I could, if I suppose I were running an opera company, I'd have unlimited number of ideas about it, but the whole business aspect of it would flummox. I wouldn't know what to say.
I break out in hives thinking about that. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, favorite cuss word in any language?
Let's see. Probably. Well, I know my favorite is Mori Donato from Tosca. Because in New York apartments, as you may know, we don't have few of them have screens, and even up on ours on the 14th floor, we get flies and things. So when I go on the warpath against a fly, if it's been a real fight, I always, when I finally kill it, I say, Mori Donato.
That's a good one for both of us too.
Yeah, that's good.
Serious question. What has the last year taught you, if anything?
Not to take anything for granted. In the arts, but also in our lives, in terms of just being able to see friends, hug them, have dinner in your own apartment. Is that too much to ask for?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, it's so good to see you, and give the person a big hug. It's like, or, not to be too personal or too revealing, but my last year in April, my father was 99. He died, and he had been very, very, so that's not a sad story. I mean, he had such a long, rich life,
right?
And really, he was very active right up until like just a couple months before. He didn't live far from me on Long Island, and so of course that was sad. But okay, so that's in terms of the stories we know of people dying, that was a good story, a good life story, because it was so long and rich, but like many families, we could not do anything in terms of a memorial or funeral or anything. My brother and sister live in New England and their families, and it's been a year and a half. I still haven't seen my sister, but my husband and I are going at the end of May. We're going up to Boston. Now everybody's vaccinated.
Yeah.
We can do that. And finally, in the fall, sometime at this restaurant my father loved on Long Island, this Italian restaurant, we're going to have a kind of gathering and memorial. But even that, I mean, that really, I did learn that like weddings. There's no wedding I've ever been to that couldn't have been a little earlier or a little later. A couple finds a good time,
right?
And if it needs to be postponed, that's okay. You find another time,
right?
Like funerals, and everything stops in everyone's lives and the whole family. Everything stops immediately. Everyone comes together immediately.
Right.
That's what you do.
Right.
That's just what happens. no one thinks twice about that, of course. And that all of that, I know many families who had to, just couldn't do that. So that was a big, big loss. So that's, it's one of the things that we, you know, and just the other day, we had a friend over here for dinner. It's the first time in a year, you know, and I mean, so it's amazing but it's going to start, you know, spiraling now. It's going to happen more and more.
We hope. We hope.
But maybe we'll see you in the fall.
Yes.
For the Tosca.
But we have one last question, right? Do we have one last
yes,
question?
I'm sorry.
Oh, one last question, one of our faves.
Okay.
If heaven exists, what do you want to hear God say as you walk through the pearly gates?
Yes. I would like him to say, let me show you where all your loved ones are, your friends and loved ones are. They're waiting for you. You know, like that's what I'd like. Yeah.
I hope it happens. You know, I hope for all of us it happens, that we get to give them one more hug or
or party for eternity.
Party for eternity. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Tony.
For your time. My goodness, thank you.
For your knowledge and information. Amazing.
Well, practically the first thing I said is thank both of you for what you do, which is harder than what I do, and really at the core of everything that we love about this art form.
We love it.
Miss it, love it. Yes, I mean I've been so fortunate to go out and do a few things, but I got to tell you, it's slightly soul sucking, sapping, because every one of them except for 1, 2 have been with new audience, and
I know
that's not opera, as you say. It has to be live. So we're working for that.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Be well.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.